How committed are you to accomplishing your goals? I caught up with a good friend of mine, Darren Harris, because what has really inspired me in all our conversations is his can do attitude. There is literally nothing that stops him from accomplishing what he wants to in his life. He's a dual Paralympian. He's always wanted to be a Paralympian in football. So when he was kicked off the team and unable to compete in one of the Paralympics, instead of giving up, he just took up another sport and competed in judo for England. And then 4 years later, he was accepted onto the football team and still achieved his life goal. And he's also the most decorated and capped England blind footballer as well. So for me to accomplish my goals, for me to get inspiration in how to have that minority mindset and that can-do attitude, I knew I needed to interview Darren. And so I brought him into my live online summit that was held earlier this month on the Strong Summit. And I interviewed him for thousands of others, and I'm bringing it to you again today. So please listen to this conversation with Darren and get inspired, and also look in our own lives at the same time to see, where are we compromising? Where are we making up things that are harder or making them perceived as harder than they actually are? Thank you so much for joining me, Darren.
It's always wonderful to help you out. You well?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. And I just wanted to, for the people who don't know Darren, we've been friends for quite some time, maybe too long now, I think. And you are a multiple dual Paralympian, is that right?
That's right.
And England's most capped and most decorated blind footballer.
That's also right.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm glad I did my research. So I've got a few questions. As you know, I'm about to embark on this crazy adventure. And I brought you on because I really admire your go-getting attitude. You never see anything as a challenge. You just see it as a reason to push harder throughout that. And I was curious, where did your can-do attitude come from?
Oh, great question. I think it came from my mother. Yeah, I really do. I think she encouraged me to never use my blindness as an excuse, and didn't allow that to stop me from achieving what I could in life. So really, I think she laid that platform for me to go on and do the things that I've achieved. Definitely.
Awesome. And did you always want to be an athlete? Were you one of those kids that sat in school and did all this homework? I don't think you were.
Well, I don't know what gives you that impression. I was quite bright, but I didn't enjoy sitting in a classroom for 7 hours a day. I always tell people at school I was told to sit down and shut up, and I ended up being a professional speaker and a professional footballer. I think sport was the thing that I always enjoyed doing. Whether it was playing football, whether it was running around, we used to roll bits of paper up and sellotape them together, and any opportunity to do sport, we found it before school, break time, lunchtime, after school. I would have done it in the middle of the night if I'd been allowed.
Yeah, fair enough. And so when did you, because you actually started judo first, but that was your first sport, wasn't it?
No, it was sort of a sabbatical, I call it. It was in the middle. I started with football. I made my England debut back in 1996. It was a terrible game, actually. I came on as a substitute, and then the coach took me off after a couple of minutes because I was that bad. And I came off and I learned, as we all have to do in life. And I spent the next 8 years kind of progressing through the team. I became captain. I led the team to qualify for our first Paralympic Games in Athens. But unfortunately, we weren't allowed to compete there because Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland wouldn't sanction us to play as Great Britain. And it was at that point that I thought, well, I really do want to be a Paralympian. And, I had to sack off my job and give up, the comfort and the security that came with a job, and embark on a new journey. And that's when I started judo. Well, I didn't start doing judo. I already was a black belt in judo, but it's when I decided to give it 100% of my attention, which meant training twice a day, 6 days a week, and making sure I gave myself the very best chance of making it.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to pull that back up because you sound so nonchalant, like, you know, you just stopped football and started judo and quit your job. Did you have any fear at all in that moment when you 100% committed?
Yeah, I did, but a lot of the fear comes from others. Actually, you're fearful because everyone tells you it's a really scary thing to do. So, when I handed in my notice, everybody just assumed that I was going to move to a better company or be getting a pay rise somewhere else. And, when I told them that I wasn't, that I was going to be following my dreams and doing judo, and they said, well, how much money are you going to be getting? I said, well, nothing, but obviously if things work out, then potentially I could get on lottery funding. But it was really, the fear comes from everybody else. It's your mother telling you, why are you doing that? And why are you giving up this? Why are you giving up that security? Why are you giving up a well-paid job? It came from others telling you, like, well, what happens if this happens? And what if that happens? And so the fear really comes from others. We only learn fear through what people around us tell us. And what you find, as we met each other and other people like ourselves, is that when you meet other inspiring people, they kind of think, well, actually, this is perfectly okay to do this, because that's ultimately how you're going to progress and do the things that you really want to do.
Yeah, very true. So, I mean, that strikes a chord with me because, I love my family dearly. I love my friends as well, but I do get a few messages. My mother, who's watching this live, does say to me, I love what you do, Kate, but you scare me. Aren't you afraid? How do you deal with not listening to them, giving them the space, but also, not really buying into their fear?
Well, ultimately, it's your life, and you're going to live with those regrets if you don't do it. I remember sitting in my office, and there was a guy that was in his mid-50s. He'd probably been there 30 years. And I just kind of looked at him, metaphorically speaking, and thought, is that going to be me in 20 years' time? Am I going to be sitting in a job that I don't particularly enjoy, traveling? I was commuting an hour each way to work, not loving what I did, coming home feeling not particularly inspired with what was in front of me, sitting down watching soaps on TV. I couldn't see that as my life for the next 20 years. But people tell us, well, there's no other choice. That that's what most people do. So therefore, if most people do, it's okay. And I'm going, well, that's not me. What I consider myself and I'm known for is having a minority mindset. And it's doing the things that the majority find hard. It's doing the things that actually every single one of us could do, but don't do because we allow those negative thoughts to enter our minds. So I suppose I would say to them, are you truly happy with your life? And if you're not, then do something about it, rather than sitting there whinging and moaning about it.
Yeah, very true. And it paid off, because in 2008 you went to Beijing and competed for GB in judo, which is absolutely amazing. And how did that feel, knowing that you risked it all, and here you were competing for your country, proving yourself right, pretty much, that you could do it?
Yeah, well, I think it kept me really honest. And people talk about mindfulness. So I think one of the things that I noticed in those 4 years is that I never really thought too far ahead. I really just focused on improving day by day, making sure that I was a better athlete the next day than I was today. And I never got too far ahead of myself. I didn't have that space to do that. I didn't know if I was going to make it. And it made sure that I trained hard. I didn't have days off. I didn't go off sick. And little niggles that I had, I found ways to get through those niggles, because ultimately they were just barriers in the way. And if I missed a day's training, that was a day that I wasn't improving. And so I was just ultra focused. And it wasn't until the moment when I knew I'd qualified that I kind of relaxed for a moment. And then even once I'd qualified, I still then kind of thought, well, now the next challenge is, seeing if I can go and get a medal. So I just kept sort of I really stayed in the moment all the way through. And I didn't let the prize distract me, because I think it can really, you can think about the finishing point that you want to get to, but to get to that finish point, you've got to make 100 steps, 1,000 steps, a million steps, and but the only step you can focus on is the next one.
Yeah, it's very true. And a lot of us sort of dragging our past with us, the regrets or the resentments, but also the fear of the future. And neither of them are going to get us anywhere. It's what we do today. So yeah, it's really powerful. So did you get I know the answer, but did you get your medal?
No, I didn't. No, I was devastated at the time. It was really funny, actually. I fought the Cuban, who was world champion at the time, Victor Sanchez, his name was, and I'd never beaten him before that. I never beat him after that, and I never beat him on that day. He was too good, and I think, ultimately, your place in the food chain. There's always going to be someone who can be better than you on the day. And but I did. I was devastated. Putting all of that sort of sweat, blood, and tears into it. And I remember you go through something called the mix zone, which is where the journalists come and stick their fluffy microphone in your face, and they ask you to sort of put into words how you're feeling in that moment. And so this journalist comes up to me. She goes, "So how do you feel?" I went, "Well, imagine your best friend sleeping with your partner. Now put that into words." And she sort of sloped off, and there was a highlight show on the BBC later, and Claire Borden goes, "Unfortunately, we don't have an interview from Darren because he walked out." But it was really tough. It was really tough. But now, all those years on, where are we? 12 years on from that moment, I realised that even though I won lots of European medals and one world medal in that process, that actually the medals didn't really matter, because only I knew myself how far I'd come. I knew the journey I'd been on. I knew where I started from. And the real treasure is what's inside of us. It's knowing that when a challenge is put in front of you, that you can overcome it, whatever that challenge is. And that's worth more than any medal. That, often they're in people's lofts, or, if it's really valuable, they'll put it in a vault somewhere. But what real use has it got in a loft or a vault? The treasure's within us.
Yeah, very true. That's absolutely amazing. And that's something I'm really doing my best to build into this journey is, yes, I'm doing a lot of things out there outside of, climbing this and running across that and swimming this, but focusing on the inner journey. How can I make sure that whatever I've done stays with me rather than leaves me hollow at the end and feeling tired?
And I've met a lot of people like that. I had my own challenges with mental health, but I remember when I was doing some work with Dane Kelly Holmes Trust, and I met a lady who was Olympic champion, and she said to me, you spend your whole life getting to the top of Everest, only to discover that the only way is down. And what I took from that is that she never really enjoyed the journey. She got to the mountaintop, and I think she was expecting some epiphany that, wow, well, now I'm here, like this is supposed to happen, And a lot of athletes, when they win medals, they're standing at the top of the podium and they're expecting some sort of epiphany, and it rarely happens that way. It's like, okay, so what now? But for me, it was you've got to engage in the journey. You've got to really that is your life, isn't it? Is the journey, and the end is just some transient point which disappears in a fleeting moment, and you can never sort of reproduce that elation or sadness in that moment when you kind of reach there. But what you can cling on to is the journey, because that's most of it. That's whether it's those 4 years that I was training for the games, whether it's been the sort of 23 years from the start to the end of my England career. Those big blocks of time are the things that you can just tap into and think about, all the shared memories, the camaraderie, the courage, the moments you were scared, the things that you look back on and think, wow, how did I actually do that? How did I actually survive that moment? Those are the real things that I love to kind of hold on to.
Yeah, and I know that you've also got a degree in psychology. So answering that question, how, you also make sure you back it up with the knowledge behind it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a skeptic. If you say something to me, I'm going to go, really? You know, how do you know that's true? Well, where's your evidence? I was really cynical. I studied maths at university originally. And so I was always used to, you know, absolutes. Things either were or they weren't. You could prove something or it didn't exist. And so I met this performance psychologist a few months before I went to the Beijing Paralympics. And I walked into his office and I was really, really skeptical about psychology. I just thought it was wishy-washy stuff, you know, just people messing with your head, you know. And so I walked in and I sort of sat down opposite him. I said, oh, well, you know, can you guarantee me a gold medal? Of which he went, no. So then I said to him, well, is there any point in me speaking to you then? So, you know, I was literally prepared to get up and walk out of the room because I thought, well, if you can't guarantee me a gold medal, what can you offer me? And he kind of said, you know, where are you from? What's your background? And I mentioned maths. He goes, oh, it all makes sense now. I said, oh, what have I just told you? And he said, well, obviously you require a much higher burden of proof than most people, you know. And so he started talking to me about my warm up and what I listen to and why do I listen to that? You know, is it the tempo? Is it the beat? Is it the words? And I just started to think about things in a completely different way. Until that point, I thought to be a good athlete, you just focused on your technique, you focused on the physical side. I didn't realize about psychology, I didn't realize that ultimately everything we do starts with a thought. and that was the essence of it. And I was so blown away by my half an hour meeting with him that I thought, I need to know more. And I went away and I studied it. I went to university. I know I did a kind of conversion course because I already had a degree, and then I did a master's in it. And I was just, yeah, I was blown away by it. I just suddenly realized that this was the key, was our mindset, is how we think about things, how we think and behave. Everything starts with thought. Where do those thoughts come from? You know, how do we allow those thoughts to enter our minds? You know, it's the messages that we're told at school, it's the messages that we're told at home, the stuff we watch on TV. All these things have a massive influence on how we think and behave. And I realized that, you know, if we could control that, then we could change, you know, the outcomes of our lives.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I don't think many people realize that the key to success is in us. The key to success is what we think and what we say. Our words are so powerful that, you know, we can create a mountain or we could knock one down. So yeah, what you're saying is super, super poignant and also very relevant to me, that when I'm preparing, I'm going to be using those empowering positive words and focus on the positive, back it up with action, but make sure I'm focusing on what could be possible, not what might go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what you're embarking on is, and it is really true. I mean, when we first met, it was sort of after one of your Iron Man efforts, and I know you were going to try and convince me to do this Iron Man, and I remember, and this reminds me how powerful the mind is, and I always think, you know, as people in the sort of personal development space that we are, is that we have to sort of practice what we preach, you know, and this is what you're going out on your adventure is. It's to remind us that doing this stuff's really, really difficult. And we have to remember what it feels like to encounter these obstacles. And so one of my big obstacles was the swim. You know, I knew I could run a marathon. I knew I could cycle 112 miles on a bike. But I didn't believe that I could do the swim. And I remember going on this open water swim with a couple of friends, and getting in the water, had a wetsuit on, felt fine. And I remember as soon as I put my face in the water, panic just overtook me. It was incredible. It was so powerful. And I remember one of the ladies who was with me says, you know, Darren, you do realize you've got like a flotation device on. I had this float which was strapped around my waist on my back, and I literally forgot I had it because my mind wasn't in the moment. I was just thinking, I can't do this. And and it was obviously I've got my challenges. I've got a vision impairment. I'd swam in a swimming pool where I knew there'd be a lifeguard who was at most 10 or 15 meters away. I knew that the pool was only 6 feet deep. I knew that there was a lane rope either side, which was only a meter deep. I knew that the ends of the pools are only 25 meters apart. So I kind of felt safe. But when I was out there in the big open space, it was really, really, really stressful. And so it reminded me that, you know, just because you've achieved in one aspect of your life doesn't necessarily make it immediately transferable, and that those limiting beliefs, those fears can enter at any moment when you put yourself in a challenging situation. So yeah, that was my experience, and I thought, no, this is really, really powerful. You know, I can use this to remind me of the journey that you have to go through to get from A to B, but also that I can use it to teach others about that same problem.
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. And, you know, we still haven't done the Ironman, but, you know, I think both of us have got different projects on at the moment, but we might revisit
Yes.
later. And just to highlight, because I remember, you know, helping you with the cycling and some of the running training, you actually picked up my road bike, not the tandem, and you
Mm.
cycled it up and down your street.
Mm.
Obviously you are blind and didn't hit any of the parked cars. You managed to maneuver around them and do a U-turn and come back. And that was just because you may be a bit determined, but you were like, I can do this. And you did it. You used, you know, bat sensors or radars to be able to maneuver. It was magic.
Yeah, there's a brilliant guy called Daniel Kish, and we've actually got the same eye condition, retinoblastoma. But if you look for him on YouTube, he's the master of echolocation. They call him the Batman. But yeah, you can hear sort of part objects because the sound echoes off them in a way. I mean, in terms of cycling, that was just muscle memory. I learned how to cycle when I could see, so I always remembered how to ride. But in terms of, you know, cycling in a straight line and not hitting the objects, yeah, that was very much using my spatial awareness and just something I suppose I developed through playing football as well. It's just using every available bit of information in the environment to help us to know where we are in space. Gymnasts get brilliant at this, when they're leaping through the air and they're somersaulting, they have to be aware of where they are in space at any one moment so that they land on their feet instead of their head. And this just comes through practice. And I've had an awful long time to practice it.
Yeah, it was amazing and hugely inspirational. So there's no excuses. You know, we can always find a way, in short.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to carry on chatting, and I know we will later in the month, but I just wanted to end with 5 questions that I'm asking pretty much every speaker that I'm speaking to, because I want to get a bit more insight into certain elements that are my curio, if you want. So the first question I've got is, what one skill do you think leaders need today that we're not seeing in the area at the moment?
That one's easier. Listening. I mean, do you want me to elaborate, or I mean, we do an awful lot of talking, but we have to be good listeners. I remember when I was captain of the team, and sometimes people don't always say what they think and what they feel, and so you have to really read between the lines and listen carefully to what people aren't saying as well as what they are saying, to try and get some inkling into what's going on in their lives. Because if you're going to lead people, then you have to know where they're coming from and the challenges they're facing.
Yeah, very true. Very good skill. And personally, what do you follow more, logic or intuition?
I think I'm more logical. I think my maths brain comes in there. I've always loved solving puzzles. But yeah, instinct does definitely come into it. But I'm definitely a logical person. It has to kind of make sense to me.
Yeah, great. And how do you deal with failure or not achieving your goals? I know we've covered that a bit.
Just move on to the next one. I think though also you do try and have to learn from your mistakes, and actually they are really, really valuable. I mean, I've used the metaphor of the garden, and compost is something that I'm really interested in, because it's the stuff we throw away that we think's of no value and of no use to us. When you dig up the plants and the weeds in your garden, you chuck them on the compost pile. But when they rot down, they then become food for your garden. So that stuff that you thought was rubbish is actually vital for your growth. So you only truly learn through your mistakes and failures.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, because the beautiful rose has the healthiest manure as well. So
absolutely, let's
anything.
love them. Let's roll around in manure.
We're a rose. and what keeps you motivated every single day?
So I always try and connect with other inspirational people. And that's how I keep myself going. Because every time I think to myself, you know what, Daz, you've done enough. Isn't it time to just put your feet up and grow old gracefully? Why not just watch soaps on TV and have an easy life? And but then I go and speak to people like yourself and all the other people that I kind of connect with, and they're still out there doing amazing things, and they're 60 and they're 70 years old and they're 80 years old, and they're saying, okay, well, why not? Why not just keep going? Why stop now? So yeah, I get my inspiration from others. I get my motivation from just watching other people do amazing things, and they're saying that. And I just think to myself, in fact, the reason why I ran the London Marathon was because I was watching it one year, and there was this 85-year-old lady running it, and they interviewed her at the end, and she wasn't like a lifelong runner. She'd run her first marathon when she was 71, and I thought, wow. And I thought, well, because I used to tell myself, I'm a sprinter, and I'm better over short distances, but there was this 85-year-old lady running it, and I just kind of thought, well, if she can do it, then I can. I haven't got an excuse. I might not want to do it, and I might choose an easier option, but there's no doubt that I could do it.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah, good on you. And to everyone listening, what one message would you like to leave with us?
You've got to be your true self. I think there are always influences. I tell people to live a life out of the ordinary. I don't think being average or mediocre is anything worth celebrating, really. So I just think if we're gonna live out our true potential, then we have to do the things that really fire us, because ultimately, if you're doing something you love, then it doesn't even feel like work. And so you're out there and you're doing it, and you're going to get better and better and better at it. And then, so I don't think I chose consciously to sort of stand out from the crowd. I just wanted to do the things that I really enjoyed. And because I enjoyed it, I wanted to do it more. And because I did it more, I got better at it. And it becomes this sort of positive feedback loop. And so that's it for me. It's live a life out of the ordinary. Be yourself, and it's the only way you will achieve your true potential.
Yeah, and because it's your nickname, we need to dazzle as well a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I'm known as the minority mindset. That's it. We're all minorities in their own way, yet we sort of pander to the crowd. It's got a big pull effect, hasn't it? It's kind of like a magnetic pull. It drags us back into there, and you're trying to escape from it, and it keeps pulling you back. But once you break free, it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it is. And something I'm learning, because what I'm stretching myself quite a lot recently, is I still want to stay in my comfort zone. So the striving never stops, and me always wanting to retract is always present as well. So it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, really.
Yeah, that was one of the things I used to hate was the ice bath, and it's a video I show in my talks actually. And I used to go in this ice bath, and I used to scream, and and I actually became like the laughing stock of my team. When it was my turn, I was hiding under the bed or locking myself in my room, and it just became a bit of a running joke amongst my teammates, and so much so that they actually started to film me getting in there for their own personal joy and entertainment. And I thought, I've got to sort this out. And I'd been just making up excuse after excuse. I'd say, well, I'm black, and obviously black people don't like the cold, and I'd go, well, I've got lower body fat than everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever seen a skinny polar bear kind of thing? And I just kept coming up with all these things that were stopping me from doing it. And it was only really once I engaged in the process of actually finding out how. In fact, I even started looking up research to see if there was evidence out there to show that ice baths are actually bad for you. I went to an awful lot of effort to try and get out of it. And then it was only once I decided that, I've become a laughing stock. I need to sort myself out. And I went in there and I was fine. I just started changed my mindset, focused on my breathing, practiced mindfulness. And there's a Russian guy I heard basically said that I say comfort's the enemy of progress. Everything that's comfortable in your life keeps you where you are, whether it's a lovely hot bath, whether it's your comfy bed, whether it's just the bean bag next to the TV. If it's really comfortable, you don't want to move. So comfort is the enemy of progress. And if you want to progress, if you want to get somewhere in life, then you have to get used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's very true. Well, for anyone wanting to follow you, how can we get in touch and follow your journey, Darren?
I'm on LinkedIn, which is a great way of connecting with me. Darren Harris GB is my social media tag for everything, and on my website it's darrenharrisgb.com. So yeah, look forward to connecting with anyone out there who wants to know how to get a minority mindset.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today and sharing your story. I absolutely adore speaking with you because it's so uplifting, and I always feel like I could summit Everest, which is quite handy for this one.